Transformations Women, Gender, and Psychology, 3rd edition by Mary Crawford. Chapter 6 Gendered Identities, Childhood and Adolescence Continued. Parents, not gender neutral. From the first minute of a baby's life, its parents are forming impressions of this new little person. Do parents perceive their babies in gender stereotyped ways? In one study, mothers and fathers were asked to rate their newborn on a list of attributes provided by the experimenters. Parents of sons rated their babies as stronger as well as less delicate, feminine and fine-featured than did parents of daughters. However, when asked to provide their own description of the baby, the parents used language that did not differ according to the baby's sex. This study suggests that gender stereotyping of infants can be primed, in this case by providing a list of gender stereotyped attributes. Of course, our society provides many ways to prime gender stereotypes about infants. When they were asked the same questions a week later, mothers in this study no longer stereotyped their infants, but fathers still did. The mothers may have decreased their tendency to stereotype because they got to know their babies as individuals, whereas the fathers, who had less contact with their infants, did not. Many other studies of infants and young children show that fathers view their children in gender stereotyped ways more than mothers do. Although fathers may stereotype more, they have less opportunity to convey their gender schemas to their offsprings because they spend much less time overall with infants and young children. Differences in parental behaviors may provide important models for children to observe and imitate. Everything a father or mother does when the children are present provides an example of accepted female and male behavior. Take nurturance, for example. In most societies, young children see that mothers more often take care of their bodily needs, soothe and comfort them, and play gently with them. One of the most important ways parents socialize babies and young children is by talking to them. In the toddler and preschool years, girls and boys get different kinds and amounts of talk about emotions, contributing to gender differences in emotionality. Overall, mothers talk more to children than fathers do, and their talk is more supportive and emotion-focused, while fathers' talk is more direct and informative. These differences in parental behaviors are congruent with gender stereotypes of aggressiveness for females and instrumentality for males. Mothers also talk more and use more supportive speech to their daughters in particular. This pattern is consistent with socializing girls towards connectedness and communality. Parents also play with their sons and daughters differently during the preschool years. They do more pretend and fantasy play with girls, and fathers in particular do more rough and tumble, physical, and pretend aggression plays with boys. In a meta-analysis of over 150 North American studies, fathers were more likely than mothers to encourage their children towards gender-typed play and activities. It is also clear that children pick up the message their parents send. In one study of 4-year-olds, almost half of the boys said that they could not play with girls' toys because their father would think they were bad. In a meta-analysis, parents' attitudes about their own masculinity or femininity, as well as their gender stereotyped attitudes about others, significantly predicted their children's gender-related beliefs and attitudes. The more traditional parents' gender ideology, the more gender-typed their children were. Interestingly, the effect was stronger for mothers. Thus, the gender schemas of children which are applied both to themselves and to others, are formed partly through exposure to their parents and gender schemas. Before you conclude that parents are entirely responsible for turning out gender-typed girls and boys, it is important to remember a few points. First, meta-analysis shows that the areas where parents treat their sons and daughters similarly are more numerous than the areas where they treat them differently. Second, the most recent meta-analysis was done on studies only to the 1980s, which were largely restricted to white, middle-class, heterosexual families. Perhaps prenatal attitudes about gender have gotten more flexible since then, and less traditional families may socialize their children differently. For example, a more recent study that compared children adopted by lesbian couples, gay male couples, and heterosexual couples found that the boys and girls in gay and lesbian families were less gender-typed in their play than those of heterosexual parent families. Moreover, parental treatment of children may be influenced by the children's own characteristics. Parents may talk more to girls because girls on average are more responsive to talk. They may play more rough and scary games with boys because boys enjoy them more. The children's characteristics probably interact with the parents' beliefs about gender to influence parents' differential treatment of sons and daughters. Finally, there are plenty of other influences over which parents have little control. Peer influences. From an early age, children choose to play with same-gendered friends, a pattern called gender segregation. This preference emerges around the age of 2, when girls start to orient more towards playing with other girls. Boys' preference for other boys develop about a year later. Gender segregation increases steadily during the preschool years. By age 4.5, about 90% of a child's social playtime is with same gender. Others. This spontaneous gender sorting occurs not only in our own society, but also in many others. Adults do not usually initiate or encourage gender segregation. Why then do children self-segregate by gender? One explanation based on cognitive developmental theory is that they want to fit into their prescribed gender roles, and it's easier in same-sex playgroups. Another theory is that children choose others with compatibility playstyles. According to this explanation, boys on average have higher activity levels than girls, a difference that may have a biological basis. According to this explanation, boys on average have a higher activity level than girls, and may prefer to play with others who are as active as they are. Girls may be more verbally and socially advanced and prefer to play with others who are as good at sharing and communicating as they are. Both explanations are supported by research. For example, a study on elementary school kids' attitudes about their same-gender peers showed that they were an in-group bias and positive expectancies about in-group interactions. In other words, kids self-segregate by gender both because they prefer the company of other girls or boys and because they like to do the same kinds of things that the other girls or boys are doing. When kids play in gender-segregated groups, their play styles diverge and become increasingly gender-typed. Boys play in gender-segregated groups involving more competition, confrontation, and risk-taking. Girls play in their group involves more negotiation, cooperation, talking about oneself, and contact with adults. The more territorial and physical a game is, the more likely it is that the elementary school children will segregate while playing in. In other words, gender differences in plays are shaped by the peer context. Gendered play, in turn, affects friendship style. By the time they are in the 4th or 5th grade, girls' friendships are organized around confiding in each other and talking about others, whereas boys' friendships are more often organized around sports and other activities. These different friendship styles continue into adulthood. The playground of childhood are an important step in creating each new generation of gender-typed adults. Gendered segregation is not just a matter of differences, it is a matter of status. Boys, in particular, create in-group solidarity and derogate the outgroup girls. For example, boys taunt other boys who do not conform to group norms by calling them faggot or sissy. They also reinforce gender segregation by teasing and making jokes about romantic attractions. If Tori is a low-status, unpopular girl, boys may tease another boy by accusing him of liking her and saying that he will get cooties from her. Girls rarely tease other girls for being tomboys or accuse boys of having cooties. When a girl picks up a fight, she may be called mean, but she is not accused of being like a boy. Usually, it is boys who patrol the boundaries between groups by encouraging opposition between boys and girls, defining cross-gender contact in terms of sex and pollution, and scapegoating some girls as untouchables. For unpopular girls like Tori, hostile teasing from high-status boys may make playtime into a nightmare. When boys learn competitive, dominance-oriented play styles, and girls learn more cooperative styles, girls are at a disadvantage in mixed groups. The tactics they use to gain power and influence with other girls, persuasion and negotiation, simply do not work with boys. In one early study, children were allowed to play with a movie viewing toy in groups of 4, 2 boys and 2 girls. Only one child at a time could see the movie. In this situation, boys ended up with 3 times as much viewing time as girls. Similar patterns may occur when children have to share computers in a classroom or compete for a teacher's attention. The tactics boys learn in all-boy play groups help them achieve dominance in many different kinds of interactions. We should not conclude that girls are not competitive or not interested in status. The difference seems to be that girls' play style teaches them interpersonal skills, which they prefer to use over overt physical aggression, whether they are competing or cooperating. When girls want to be aggressive and dominant, they may engage in relational aggression, hostile acts that attempt to damage another close relationship or social standing. In other words, a girl may spread a rumor about another girl, block her from sitting down on the bus, or may In other words, a girl may spread a rumor about another girl, block her from sitting down on the bus or in the lunchroom, or post a photo on Snapchat or Instagram of all her other friends at a party so everyone knows exactly who's being left out. Relational aggression can be just as harmful as physical aggression. Traditionally, psychologists have claimed that there is a consistent gender difference in aggression, with boys being more aggressive than girls from early childhood. This supposed gender difference may have been the result of an androcentric definition of aggression. Because it included only physical aggression, a meta-analysis showed that there is indeed a moderate effect size for physical aggression in favor of boys. However, when relational aggression is added to the mix, the picture is more complicated. The same meta-analysis showed a small effect size in favor of girls. And what about cross-cultural differences and similarities? A study of 7 to 10-year-old children in China, Colombia, Italy, Jordan, Kenya, the Philippines, Sweden, Thailand, and the US, which asked the kids themselves to report on their use of both kinds of aggressions, found that in all 9 countries, boys were more physically aggressive, but there were no consistent gender differences in relational aggression. In some, girls and boys may favor different kinds of aggression on average, but there is far more similarities than differences. Boys are somewhat more physically aggressive, and both girls and boys are in direct relational aggression. Just about every school has its share of both mean girls and mean boys. Gender segregation and the results differences in interaction styles are not absolute or inevitable. In a study of multicultural groups of 4-year-olds in a Head Start program, girls and boys who were less gender segregated and gender stereotyped in their play were just as well adjusted and socially competent as their peers. In a classic observational study of elementary school children on their playgrounds, there was a great deal of variety in play. Unsegregated and non-stereotypical play actually occurred quite often. The strictest segregation was among the most popular and socially visible students. Others quietly went their own way, often violating the rules of gender segregation. Cross-gender friendships do occur, though they may be kept out of sight. I remember a middle school friendship with a boy who, like me, was obsessed with chemistry experiments. We never talked at school, but on Saturdays we happily burned holes in our parents' carpet as we tried to mix potions that could eat through any substance. Our friendship was underground, but it was important to both of us.